The lobby of St. Mary's Medical Center glowed under harsh fluorescent light, the kind that stripped warmth from color and left everything flat and sterile. The air carried that familiar cocktail of antiseptic and fear, of distant sobs muffled behind closed doors. Nicholas Rain stood at the reception desk, his fingers tapping an impatient rhythm against the counter as the receptionist rifled through folders. His tailored navy suit hung perfectly, his silk tie unwrinkled despite the Los Angeles humidity. Every inch of him radiated control except for his eyes. Those were tired, empty. He wasn't here for sentiment. He never was. This visit was just another box to tick, another charitable appearance his PR team had penciled in between conference calls and investment briefings. Rain Technologies had pledged millions to pediatric heart research, and now he was here to collect the donation summary in person. A simple gesture, the kind that made headlines about compassion and corporate humanity. The truth was far less noble. Nicholas hadn't felt compassion in a very long time. He glanced at his phone as another email notification buzzed across the screen. Market reports, memos, numbers that defined the rhythm of his life more than any heartbeat ever could. He muttered a distracted thanks as the receptionist handed him a sealed envelope. He turned toward the exit, eager to step back into the world of tinted car windows and efficiency. That's when he heard it, laughter thin and fleeting from somewhere down the hall. A child's laugh, bright enough to pierce through the mechanical drone of hospital machines. It was followed by a sound softer, smaller, a whisper of movement behind him. A gentle tug on his sleeve. Nicholas turned, frowning slightly. Standing there was a little girl no taller than his waist, with pale blonde hair braided into two uneven pigtails. Her yellow dress was faded, the hem frayed, and her shoes looked one size too small. In her hand, she clutched a crumpled $5 bill, as if it were the most precious thing in the world. "Mister," she said, her voice trembling just above a whisper, "where can I buy a heart for my mom?" For a moment, Nicholas didn't move. He just stared at her, uncomprehending. Her words hung in the air like a bell's fading echo. The sentence didn't make sense, not in the literal, rational way his world operated. But the rawness of it, the desperate hope in her eyes, hit him with a force that knocked the breath from his lungs. He swallowed hard, his voice catching. "What did you say?" The girl looked down at her small hand, clutching the money tighter. "Mommy's heart is broken," she said softly. "The doctors say it's not working right. But I thought maybe, if I had enough money, I could buy her a new one." She held out the wrinkled bill, her eyes wide, hopeful. Nicholas felt something splinter deep inside him. A sharp crack through the cold armor he'd built over years of boardrooms and empty penthouses. The air around them seemed to still. Even the hum of the hospital lights faded. For the first time in years, he felt the unbearable weight of someone else's pain. He crouched down slowly so that his eyes met hers. Up close, he could see the faint smudges beneath her eyes, the way she bit her lip to keep it from trembling. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Lily," she said. "Lily Murray." He forced a smile that wavered halfway. "Lily, that's a beautiful name." She shrugged shyly, her fingers twisting the edge of her dress. "Mommy picked it. She likes flowers." Nicholas's throat tightened. He wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. What could he possibly offer? He who could buy companies and cities had no idea how to answer a question that innocent. He glanced down at the money again, 5 crumpled dollars warm from her tiny hand. He'd spent more than that on a cup of coffee that morning. Yet here she was, offering everything she had to save someone she loved. Nicholas swallowed hard, his chest constricting. "I don't think you can buy a heart, sweetheart," he said softly, his voice barely steady. "But maybe I can help you find one." Her eyes widened, uncertain but curious. "You can?" He nodded. "Can you take me to your mom?" Lily's expression brightened for the first time. She nodded quickly, her braids bouncing, and turned toward the corridor without another word. Nicholas hesitated, still kneeling, then rose and followed, his polished shoes echoing against the sterile floor. He didn't know why. He didn't know what he was walking into. All he knew was that something in that little girl's question had reached through the fog of his life and pulled him somewhere unfamiliar, somewhere painfully human. And as the automatic doors closed behind them, the man who could buy anything began to wonder, for the first time, what his own heart was truly worth. Nicholas followed the little girl through the corridor, his steps heavy against the waxed linoleum. Every sound echoed. The low hum of machines, the squeak of nurse shoes, the faint chatter of voices down intersecting halls. The hospital was a maze of white walls and glass, yet somehow it felt colder than any skyscraper boardroom he'd ever stood in. Lily walked ahead, her small hand clutching that same crumpled bill as though letting go of it would make her purpose disappear. Her pace was steady but quiet, too quiet for a child her age. She didn't skip or hum or look around. She moved like someone who had learned early what silence costs. Nicholas couldn't take his eyes off her. There was something about her presence, the strange gravity of her innocence, that made him feel unsteady. He'd faced hostile investors, lawsuits, betrayals that could end careers, but nothing like this. Nothing that could pierce his chest with a single question. As they passed the pediatric ward, laughter erupted from behind a half-closed door, cartoon voices playing on a mounted TV. Lily slowed and peeked in for just a second, then kept walking. The small hesitation broke Nicholas's heart. "Do you come here often?" he asked softly, trying to fill the unbearable silence. She nodded without looking back. "Mommy lives here now," he frowned. "Lives here?" She nodded again, matter of fact. "She used to live in our old apartment, but she got tired. So the doctor said she has to stay here until she gets a new heart." Her little voice trembled at the last words. "But they said she's on a list." "I don't know where the list is." "I tried to find it." Nicholas's throat went dry. He opened his mouth to speak, to ask more. But the words died when Lily turned down a narrow hallway with a red authorized personnel only sign hanging crooked on the wall. She didn't even glance at it. She'd clearly walked this path before. At the end of the hall was a single door, half open, the edges of a white curtain visible through the crack. A low rhythmic beeping pulsed from inside. Lily stopped in front of the doorway and turned to him. "She's sleeping," she whispered. "The medicine makes her sleepy. But she likes when I bring her flowers." She held up a wilted daisy from her pocket, its stem bent, its petals bruised but still faintly yellow. "Do you think she'll wake up today?" Nicholas didn't know how to answer. He felt an invisible hand tighten around his ribs. "Let's see," he managed. He pushed the door gently. It creaked open to reveal a small, dimly lit room. Machines stood in quiet vigil around the bed, monitors glowing in green and amber. The woman lying beneath the thin white blanket looked almost weightless, her face pale against the pillow, strands of hair spread like faint gold across the sheets. Nicholas stopped breathing. The world seemed to tilt beneath him. The air thickened, the lights dimmed. For a moment he thought he was hallucinating, some cruel mirage conjured by exhaustion and guilt. But no, it was her Emily. He gripped the doorframe, his knuckles whitening. 6 years had passed since he'd last seen her. 6 years since she'd walked out of his penthouse with tears in her eyes, telling him that love shouldn't have to compete with ambition. He had told himself she'd moved on, that she was happier without him. He'd buried her memory under years of meetings, mergers, and manufactured success. But here she was, fragile, fading, surrounded by machines instead of sunlight. He took a slow step forward, his eyes burning. Her lips were slightly parted, her breathing shallow but steady. A heart monitor ticked in a painful rhythm, each beep slicing through the silence. "Mommy?" Lily's small voice broke through the fog. She walked to the bedside and gently placed the crushed daisy on the nightstand. "I brought you another flower." Nicholas watched her climb onto the chair beside the bed, resting her chin on the blanket. His own reflection in the monitor screen looked ghostly. The immaculate CEO turned into something undone and human. He moved closer until he could see Emily's face in full. There were faint freckles across her nose, the same ones he used to kiss when she was painting by the window in their New York apartment. But now her skin looked like porcelain, fragile, transparent. A scar peeked from under her hospital gown near the collarbone, a mark from countless treatments. "Are you okay?" Lily asked him suddenly, tilting her head. "You look sad." Nicholas blinked. I knew your mom once," he whispered. "A long time ago, before she got sick?" "Yes," he said. His voice cracked. "Before she got sick." Lily studied him with those same hazel eyes, eyes that seemed to hold something achingly familiar. "Mommy says I look like my dad, but I've never met him. She said he was busy." Nicholas's breath caught. His pulse thundered in his ears. For a heartbeat, the entire world fell silent, busy. The word hit like a blade. He felt it deep in his chest, twisting, cutting through every rational thought. He turned to Emily, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Emily." But she didn't stir. The monitors blinked, indifferent. The door opened behind him. A doctor stepped in, tall with sharp eyes and the composed posture of a man who'd long learned to carry bad news quietly. "Mr. Rain?" he asked. Nicholas turned, startled. "How do you know my name?" "I recognized you," the man said evenly. "I'm Dr. Grant, Emily Murray's attending physician." His gaze softened just slightly. "She's been in late-stage cardiomyopathy for months. We've done everything possible, but—" He hesitated, lowering his voice. "She's running out of time." Nicholas's jaw tightened. "What does that mean?" "It means we're out of options," Dr. Grant said quietly. "Unless a donor heart becomes available soon, we're looking at days, maybe weeks." Lily looked up suddenly, clutching her $5 bill again. "But you said she's on the list." "You said the list would help." The doctor knelt beside her, his expression tender but weary. "It will, sweetheart. We're still hoping. Sometimes it just takes longer." She looked down, unconvinced. Nicholas stared at them both, feeling a storm rise inside him. For the first time in years, money meant nothing. Connections meant nothing. The world he'd built, every acquisition, every headline, every dollar, all of it was powerless here, against the simple, merciless truth of a failing human heart. He turned back toward Emily, his vision swimming. She lay motionless, the faint rise and fall of her chest the only proof of life. Something inside him broke. Not loudly, not like glass, but quietly, like a dam cracking deep beneath the surface. He reached for her hand, fingers trembling as he brushed against her cold skin. "I can help," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "I can fix this." But as the machines hummed and the child beside him clutched her useless $5, Nicholas Rain realized for the first time in his life that there are things no man can buy, and some debts that cannot be paid in money. And somewhere, far away, a storm began to gather. One that would tear apart everything he thought he knew about love, power, and redemption. The rain came that night without warning. Sheets of it poured down across Los Angeles, streaking the glass of Nicholas Rain's car as he sat motionless behind the wheel, the hospital's white facade glowing faintly in the rearview mirror. The rhythmic tapping of rain on the windshield was hypnotic, almost cruel in its steadiness. Each drop echoing the beeping of the heart monitor that had filled his ears all day. He hadn't driven home. Home didn't feel real anymore. His penthouse, his office, the glittering skyline, all of it seemed to belong to another man, a stranger who didn't know what it meant to ache. Now, for the first time in years, Nicholas felt the weight of his name, the emptiness behind every accolade, every glossy magazine cover that called him the man who could buy anything except this. He turned the key but didn't start the car. His reflection in the windshield looked hollow. Eyes rimmed red, jaw tight, tie loosened. His hands shook faintly on the steering wheel. He thought of Emily's face, pale and still under the fluorescent lights. He thought of Lily's voice, small but steady, asking him where she could buy a heart. He exhaled sharply and slammed a fist against the dashboard. The sound echoed in the cabin, followed by the low hiss of his breath breaking. "Damn it," he whispered. "Damn it." For a man like Nicholas, anger was safer than grief. He had built empires out of it, carved entire industries from that raw electric fire. But tonight his fury had nowhere to go. There was no rival, no problem he could throw money at, no deal to negotiate. There was just time, slow, merciless time, and the sound of rain hitting glass. At some point he drove. He didn't know where, only that he needed to move. The city blurred past, glowing traffic lights smeared into streaks of color. His phone buzzed on the console with calls from his assistant, his PR director, even the board chairman. He ignored them all. He ended up at a 24-hour diner on Sunset Boulevard, the kind of place that smelled of burnt coffee and loneliness. He parked and sat there, staring through the fogged glass windows. Inside, a waitress wiped tables, humming softly. 2 truckers nursed late-night meals. Life went on, oblivious. Nicholas leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes. For the first time in years, memories came uninvited, vivid, merciless flashes. Emily standing barefoot on a paint-streaked floor in their old apartment, sunlight catching her hair. Emily laughing in the rain, spinning, her dress clinging to her knees. Emily crying in the doorway the night she left, saying she couldn't watch him disappear behind his own ambition anymore. He'd told himself she'd come back. People always came back to Nicholas Rain, but she hadn't. He opened his eyes, and for a moment he thought he saw her reflection in the diner window, soft, blurred, almost real. He blinked and it vanished, leaving only the empty street. When dawn came, the rain had stopped, but the city looked washed out, colorless. Nicholas drove straight back to St. Mary's. He didn't shower, didn't shave. The security guard recognized him and let him in without question. Upstairs, the hallways were quieter than the day before. He found Dr. Grant in his office, a modest, windowless room lined with medical charts and framed diplomas. The doctor looked up as Nicholas entered, eyes weary but sharp. "She's stable," he said before Nicholas could speak. "But that's all I can promise." Nicholas sat across from him, elbows on his knees. "Tell me exactly what she needs." Dr. Grant hesitated, folding his hands. "A heart transplant. Type O negative. It's rare, as you probably know. There are national registries, international ones. But we're at the mercy of time and compatibility. The odds aren't—" "I don't care about odds." Nicholas leaned forward. "I can make things happen. I'll pay whatever it takes. I have contacts in Zurich, Singapore, Seoul, private medical networks. Just tell me what to do." The doctor studied him quietly, then sighed. "With all due respect, Mr. Rain, this isn't a business deal. You can't buy time. You can't buy fate." Nicholas's jaw clenched. "You underestimate what money can do." Dr. Grant's gaze hardened. "No," he said softly. "I think you overestimate it." The silence that followed was unbearable. Nicholas stood abruptly, pacing the room. There must be someone who can move her up the list, expedite the match, something. Dr. Grant rubbed his temples. "There are protocols, legal and ethical lines we can't cross." Nicholas turned toward him, his voice low and sharp. "What if I told you I'm willing to cross them?" The doctor didn't flinch. "Then I'd tell you that's not saving her. That's losing yourself." Nicholas froze. The words hit him harder than he expected. He left without another word. Outside, the day was gray, the air thick with the scent of impending rain. He found himself drawn to the hospital garden again, where he'd first seen Lily playing the day before. She was there now, sitting on the grass with a small notepad, drawing with broken crayons. Her knees were scuffed, her dress a little dirtier, but her concentration was absolute. He approached quietly. "Hey," he said. She looked up, her face lighting up instantly. "You came back," he nodded. "I said I would." She patted the grass beside her. "I'm drawing my mommy," she said proudly. "See?" He knelt to look. The drawing was simple. 3 stick figures holding hands beneath a smiling sun. The tallest figure was shaded in blue. "Who's that?" he asked. "That's you," she said without hesitation. "Because you said you'd help." Something in his chest cracked open again, not painfully this time, but quietly, like a door that had been locked for years. He smiled, though his eyes stung. "You're a good artist," Lily grinned. "Mommy says when people draw happy things, it helps them stay alive longer." He looked toward the hospital window, where somewhere behind those walls Emily slept, her heart still beating, but just barely. "Then draw a lot of them," he whispered. She looked at him curiously. "Are you going to help her soon?" Nicholas hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, I'm going to help her." But even as he said it, he felt a tremor of fear ripple through him. Because for the first time in his life, he didn't know what help meant. And far above, as thunder rolled across the horizon, Nicholas Rain began to plan something he had never done before. Not a business venture, not a merger, not a profit-driven empire. He began to plan a miracle. The storm that had been gathering over Los Angeles finally broke that night. Lightning split the clouds in thin, trembling veins of white. From the upper floors of St. Mary's, the city looked like a dying circuit board. Tiny lights blinking between shadows, thunder rolling like a slow heartbeat. Nicholas Rain stood at the hospital window, phone pressed to his ear, his reflection a ghost hovering above the lights. "I don't care what it costs," he hissed. "I said private listing, confidential. If Zurich can't do it, call Seoul. Tell them I'll double the offer." He ended the call before the voice on the other end could answer. For 2 days he had barely slept. He'd turned his network into an engine of desperation. Lawyers, lobbyists, secretaries, surgeons, all spinning on his command. Every hour that passed without a lead was another thread fraying inside him. Emily's condition was stable, Dr. Grant kept saying, but that word meant nothing. Stable only meant not dead yet. Nicholas pressed his palms against the glass, feeling the cold seep into his skin. Below, ambulances came and went like restless ghosts. He thought of Lily asleep 2 floors down in the temporary family room, clutching a stuffed bear one of the nurses had given her. When he had tried to leave earlier, she'd opened her eyes and murmured, "Don't forget, Mommy." He hadn't. He couldn't. A soft knock broke the silence. Dr. Grant stepped into the room, rain glistening on his coat. "You look worse than my patients," he said quietly. "I've been busy." I noticed. The doctor set a file on the table. "You've made a lot of noise in 48 hours. I've had calls from 2 transplant directors and an ethics officer asking if I was being coerced." Nicholas turned, eyes rimmed red. "I'm trying to save her life." Grant met his gaze. "And I believe that. But this, whatever you're doing, won't change the system. Organs aren't for sale." Nicholas laughed once, bitterly. "Everything's for sale." "Not hearts," the doctor said. "Not real ones." The words landed like stones. For a moment Nicholas wanted to shout, to throw the file across the room, but instead he just sat down. His hands trembled. If I'd known about the girl, about Emily." He stopped himself. The confession burned too close to the surface. Grant's expression softened. "Lily talks about you, you know. She says you're her hero." Nicholas closed his eyes. "Then she doesn't know me." The doctor hesitated. "You could tell her." "Tell her what?" "That the man who abandoned her mother is the reason she might grow up without one?" Grant said nothing. The rain filled the silence for them. When the doctor left, Nicholas stayed in the dark, staring at the faint reflection of his own face until it blurred. By midnight, he was in his office downtown. The skyscraper was deserted. The city's storm reflected across the glass walls like fractured lightning. He poured himself a drink but didn't taste it. His assistant, Melissa, stood hesitantly in the doorway. "Sir, there's a call from Zurich on line 1. He nodded. "Patch it through." The voice crackled over the speaker, measured, European, clinical. "Mr. Rain, we've reviewed your request. There are unconventional channels, but you must understand the legality." "Spare me the disclaimers," Nicholas interrupted. "Tell me if it's possible." A pause. Then, "Yes, but it would require discretion, and a donor who is not officially registered." "How long?" 3 to 5 days. "Payment in full, offshore transfer." Nicholas stared at the blinking light on the phone. 3 to 5 days. Emily didn't have 5 days. "Do it," he said. When the call ended, the office felt colder. The rain drummed harder against the windows as if trying to warn him. He sank into his chair, head in his hands. He'd crossed the line he'd sworn he wouldn't. Somewhere inside, a quiet voice whispered that this wasn't salvation. It was desperation dressed in the language of power. But he couldn't stop, not now. Not when every tick of the clock could mean her last breath. The next morning he was back at the hospital before sunrise. Lily was in the garden again, wearing an oversized hoodie someone had donated, her braids damp with mist. She looked up when he approached, eyes bright. "You came early." He smiled weakly. "Couldn't sleep." She handed him a paper heart cut from a hospital brochure. "Mommy says hearts are stronger when people share them." Nicholas felt his throat tighten. She's right. He knelt beside her, brushing dew from the grass. "Hey, Lily, if your mom had a new heart, what would you do first?" She didn't hesitate. "We'd go home. We'd bake cookies. And then we'd plant flowers on the balcony so the butterflies come back." Nicholas swallowed hard. "That sounds perfect." Her small hand slipped into his. "You'll help her, won't you?" "Yes," he whispered. "I promise," but even as he said it, a car pulled up at the curb, black unmarked. A man stepped out, raincoat gleaming. Their eyes met for a split second, and Nicholas felt something cold crawl up his spine. He knew the look. He'd dealt with men like this before in other corners of the world. Men who dealt in the kind of trades people didn't talk about. The man nodded once, barely perceptible, then turned and disappeared into the crowd. Nicholas's pulse quickened. He looked down at Lily, still smiling up at him, and felt a wave of nausea. The storm had followed him here. That night, he received a single text message, donor located, details to follow, confirm. He stared at the glowing words for a long time. Outside, lightning flashed again, illuminating the hospital where Emily slept. He typed 3 letters, yes, and hit send. But as the message disappeared, he felt it. The first whisper of dread that the price of saving a heart might be the loss of his own. Night settled over Los Angeles like a bruise. The city's skyline shimmered beneath a veil of mist, neon bleeding into the wet asphalt. From the top floor of Rain Technologies, Nicholas watched lightning crawl across the horizon, illuminating the jagged outline of the hospital miles away. Every flash reminded him that Emily's heart was still fighting, still fragile, and every thunderclap sounded like the tick of a clock counting her down. His phone vibrated again. Message, transaction confirmed. Donneur en route, confidential arrangements underway. Nicholas stared at the words until they blurred. It was done. He had crossed the invisible line between the man he was and the man he swore he would never become. He tried to breathe, but guilt clung to his lungs like smoke. Every time he blinked, he saw Lily's face, her trust, her hope, and Emily's pale stillness in that hospital bed. A voice from the shadows broke his thoughts. "Congratulations, Mr. Rain, you just bought time." Nicholas turned sharply. A man in a charcoal suit stood by the glass wall, his silhouette framed by the city lights. He was tall, smooth-voiced, the kind of person who never gave his real name. "How did you get in here?" Nicholas asked. The man smiled faintly. "You invited me in a way. When someone of your stature starts whispering about miracles, certain doors open." Nicholas's pulse quickened. "You're from Zurich?" The man tilted his head. "Let's say I represent efficiency. You wanted results. You'll have them. But once this begins, there's no turning back." He slid a folder across the desk. No labels, only a single sheet inside. A date, a time, a signature space. Nicholas stared at it, his hand trembling. The storm outside cracked, flooding the office with white light. "And the donor?" Nicholas asked quietly. "Unregistered," the man said. "Compatible. You don't need to know more." Nicholas felt his stomach twist. "I want to know everything." The man's expression didn't change. "Information complicates mercy." When he left, the elevator doors closed with a hiss that sounded too final. Nicholas sat alone in the dark, the folder burning in his hands. By dawn, he was back at the hospital. The corridors were washed in cold light, nurses moving like ghosts through their routines. Lily was still asleep in the family lounge, curled under a donated blanket. Nicholas stood in the doorway for a long time, watching her breathe. He wanted to tell her that everything was going to be okay. He wanted to believe it himself. But the words tasted false before they even reached his tongue. "Mr. Rain," Dr. Grant's voice pulled him back. The physician stood behind him, expression drawn. "We need to talk." Nicholas followed him to a private room. The blinds were half closed, rain still streaking the window panes. "I don't know what you're doing," the doctor said carefully, "but people are making inquiries I can't ignore. Anonymous calls, requests for patient files. Someone tried to access the donor registry using your company's credentials." Nicholas's chest tightened. "I didn't authorize that." "Then stop whoever did." Grant leaned forward, eyes sharp. "I know what desperation does to people. But this road doesn't end where you think it does. You'll lose her, and you'll lose yourself." Nicholas wanted to scream that he didn't care, that he'd already lost both years ago. But he stayed silent, jaw locked. Grant sighed. "She's holding on," he said softly. "Barely. Sometimes patients surprise us." Nicholas looked up. "You mean miracles?" "Maybe." The doctor's eyes softened. "But the good kind." That afternoon, Nicholas wandered the hospital garden where Lily liked to play. The sky had cleared, the world rinsed clean. She sat cross-legged by a puddle, floating dandelion seeds on the water's surface. "Hi, Mr. Rain," she called, waving. "Mommy opened her eyes today." Just for a second, he froze. "She did?" Lily nodded, grinning. "She said your name. She said it like she remembered you." Something inside him cracked open. Hope and agony tangled together. He knelt beside her. That's wonderful, Lily." The girl looked at him curiously. "Did you know my dad?" The question landed like a blow. Why do you ask?" "Because Mommy said he was brave, and that he always kept his promises." Nicholas forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "He sounds like a good man." "She said he'll come back when she's better." He swallowed hard. Maybe he already has. Lily beamed, but before Nicholas could say more, his phone buzzed again. The same unknown number. Message: transfer confirmed. Prepare for delivery within 12 hours. He turned away quickly, pocketing the phone before she could see his face. That night, Los Angeles held its breath. Clouds rolled low and dark over the city. The streets glistened under the amber glow of streetlights. Nicholas paced the hospital parking lot, his phone pressed to his ear. You said 12 hours. Where is it? Delayed, came the reply. Complications. What kind of complications? Unavoidable ones. The line went dead. Nicholas stood in the rain, heart hammering. Every instinct told him the deal was unraveling, that the universe itself was recoiling from what he'd tried to do. He turned toward the building, toward the light in Emily's room, and felt the weight of all his choices crash down at once. Inside, alarms began to sound. A nurse shouted orders. The hallways erupted into motion. He ran, through the chaos, through the tangle of voices and flashing lights, until he reached her door. Dr. Grant was there, shouting for epinephrine, the monitors screaming their cold rhythm. Nicholas froze in the doorway, watching the team work, his body numb. Lily stood at the corner of the room, clutching her stuffed bear, eyes wide with terror. Mommy? She whispered. Nicholas knelt beside her, pulling her close. Don't look, he murmured, though his own eyes refused to turn away. Minutes stretched like hours. Then suddenly the monitor steadied, a faint, fragile pulse. Dr. Grant looked up, stunned. She's back. Nicholas exhaled shakily, tears burning his eyes. Lily hugged him tighter, whispering, See? I told you Mommy's brave. He looked at her, then at Emily, her chest rising in slow, miraculous rhythm. And in that moment, Nicholas understood something terrible and beautiful. That miracles didn't come from power, or money, or deals made in shadows. They came from surrender. His phone buzzed again in his pocket. One more message. Transaction canceled. Donor deceased. Nicholas stared at the words until they blurred into nothing. He slipped the phone back into his coat and turned toward the bed, his heart breaking open in quiet gratitude. Emily lived not because of him, but in spite of him. Outside, the storm finally broke apart, revealing a single sliver of dawn, and for the first time in his life, Nicholas Rain, man of wealth, of certainty, of control, fell to his knees and wept, not for what he'd lost, but for what he had been given back. The dawn after Emily's revival was the first Nicholas Rain had truly seen in years. The sky over Los Angeles was washed clean, the light soft and unfamiliar. He stood by the hospital window, coffee gone cold in his hands, watching the city stir awake. Behind him, monitors pulsed a steady rhythm. Emily's heart, her heart, was holding. He hadn't slept. He didn't dare. Every time her monitor beeped, he expected it to falter again. But it didn't. She slept quietly, color returning to her cheeks in faint blushes. When Lily came running in that morning, her laughter shattered the sterile hush. She smiled, Mr. Rain. Mommy smiled. He turned. Emily's eyelids fluttered open, slow as dawn breaking. Her gaze was hazy, but it found him, and for a long moment time folded in on itself. Nick? Her voice was a whisper, dry as paper. He froze. He hadn't heard his name in her voice for 6 years. I'm here, he said softly, his throat tightening. She blinked again, confusion swimming in her eyes. Why are you? He almost said, I never stopped loving you, but what came out was, rest now. We'll talk later. Her eyes closed again, and relief swept through him like fire and ice. But beneath that relief, guilt simmered. He had no right to be here. No right to the miracle he hadn't earned. Outside her room, Dr. Grant caught him by the arm. She's stable, but don't mistake this for recovery. The body can surprise us, but hearts are fragile things, especially the ones patched together by chance. Nicholas nodded, but the doctor's words tangled in his mind. Patched together by chance. By noon, reporters had gathered at the hospital gates. Somehow word had leaked. Rain Technologies CEO visiting a dying woman whose miraculous rebound had stunned the staff. Headlines swirled. Tech Titan's secret connection to heart failure patient. Nicholas's phone buzzed endlessly. His PR director begged him to leave before the story grew teeth. But he couldn't. Not while Emily was breathing. Not while Lily waited for him to come back from the vending machine just to hand him half a chocolate bar. He'd never known that kind of trust. the uncalculated kind. It terrified him. In the garden that afternoon, Lily tugged at his sleeve. "When Mommy gets better, can we all live together?" The question landed like a punch to the ribs. He crouched, forcing a smile. "We'll see, kiddo. Right now, we just need to make sure she does get better." She nodded solemnly as if sealing a promise. "Then I'll pray extra hard." Nicholas almost told her he didn't believe in prayer, but then he remembered Emily's heartbeat finding its rhythm again after all hope had died. Maybe belief wasn't about logic. Maybe it was about surrender. That night, the storm returned. Lightning flashed against the hospital's mirrored windows. Nicholas sat in the darkened cafeteria, staring at his phone. The number from Zurich glowed on the screen, unanswered. He'd canceled the transfer. The donor, the mysterious unregistered hope, was gone. The man's last message replayed in his mind. "The donor is deceased," a phrase too calm, too clean for the pit that opened in Nicholas's stomach. Something wasn't right. He started digging. He called contacts in Geneva and Singapore. In the medical underworld he'd foolishly stepped into. Everyone was silent now. Doors that had once swung open for him had slammed shut. By dawn he had one name, an alias. Harrow, the man in the charcoal suit who had walked into his office days before. There was no record of him anywhere. No passport, no company, no trace. Only whispers. A broker who dealt in desperation. Nicholas stared at the name scrawled on the paper until it blurred. Every instinct screamed that the miracle had come at a price he hadn't yet paid. When he returned to the hospital, a hush had fallen over the ward. Nurses moved quietly, eyes downcast. Dr. Grant met him at the door, face grave. "What happened?" Nicholas asked, his heart slamming against his ribs. Grant hesitated. "The man who donated the funding for Emily's early care, the anonymous donor listed under your company's foundation, was found dead this morning. Massive stroke. Signed the registry weeks ago. His blood type was O negative." Nicholas froze. The world tilted. The paper slid from his hand. He had read the donor list before, years ago when he created the registry as part of his charity initiative. There had been one anonymous signature that stood out. An older man who'd refused recognition but insisted his donation go to whoever needed a second chance. Nicholas whispered the name like a prayer and a curse. Elias Rain, his father, the man who'd died hating him, the man who'd built empires of his own and taught him that emotion was weakness, the man who'd cut him off when he chose business over blood. Dr. Grant watched the color drain from his face. "You knew him," Nicholas nodded numbly. "He was my father." Grant's eyes softened. "Then you should know his death made her transplant possible. His registry entry matched perfectly. You didn't buy a miracle, Mr. Rain, you inherited one." Nicholas staggered back, breath catching in his throat. The walls felt too close. His father, the man he had never forgiven, had saved the woman Nicholas loved. He pressed his hands to his face, shaking. The irony was cosmic, cruel, divine. Hours later, he found himself standing at Emily's bedside again. She slept peacefully, color returning to her lips. Lily was curled beside her, drawing flowers in crayon. Nicholas sat down heavily, staring at the woman he'd nearly lost and the child he'd never known. He thought of his father's final act, a man who had once told him, "You can't buy redemption, son. You have to earn it." For the first time he understood. He leaned forward, whispering, "You saved us, old man." Lily looked up, curious. "Who are you talking to?" Nicholas smiled through tears. "Someone I should have listened to a long time ago." The machines beside Emily hummed, steady and strong. Outside, the storm finally broke for good, sunlight pouring through the window like forgiveness. But deep down, Nicholas knew this peace was only temporary. The world would soon learn the truth. The headlines would come, the investigations, the accusations of bribery and corruption. And when they did, he would face them, because for the first time in his life, Nicholas Rain wasn't running from the consequences. He was walking toward them, heart open, unarmored, human. The reckoning morning came quiet but heavy, like the calm after a war that no one truly won. From the outside, St. Mary's looked peaceful. Sunlight pooling on the polished floors, nurses smiling at children in wheelchairs. But inside, a storm was gathering. Nicholas Rain felt it before he saw it. When the elevator doors opened onto the cardiac wing, he was met not by silence, but by the low hum of whispers and flashing camera lights, reporters, they had found him. "Mr. Rain, is it true your father's heart was used in the transplant? Did you pay to alter the donor sequence? Was there coercion involved in Emily Murray's surgery?" The questions crashed over him like hail. He pushed through the crowd, jaw tight, bodyguards clearing a path, but every word hit its mark. He'd spent years building an empire on the illusion of control, and now it was slipping through his fingers like water. Inside Emily's room, the chaos dissolved into a fragile quiet. She was sitting up, color returning to her cheeks, eyes open and lucid. Lily sat beside her, drawing suns on paper napkins. When Emily looked up and saw him, the years between them seemed to collapse. "You look terrible," she said softly. He laughed, an exhausted, broken sound. "You always did have a way with compliments, but there was warmth there. Real warmth." For the first time since the hospital corridor, she smiled. He sat beside her, hesitant, the weight of everything unsaid filling the space between them. "They're saying things outside," she whispered. "About how I got the transplant." He nodded slowly. "It's true." Her eyes searched his face. "What did you do, Nick?" He took a deep breath. "I tried to buy you a miracle, and in the process I almost sold my soul. But in the end, it wasn't me. It was my father." "His heart saved you," she went still. "Your father?" "He died," Nicholas said quietly. "A stroke. He'd registered years ago, anonymously. You were the match." Emily pressed a trembling hand to her chest, eyes filling with tears. "Oh God, Nick, I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything," he murmured. "Just breathe. That's all I need." Lily watched them both, sensing something sacred she couldn't yet name. Outside the room, the noise swelled again, voices demanding answers. Legal teams assembling, headlines already writing themselves. Rain Tech under investigation, CEO linked to illegal donor scandal. For once, Nicholas didn't care. That evening, he stood on the hospital roof. The city spread beneath him, an empire of glass and light he had once ruled. Now it looked distant, indifferent. Melissa, his assistant, joined him. "The board wants a statement," she said. "They're calling it a breach of ethics. The shareholders are panicking." He didn't answer. "You could deny everything," she offered. "Blame it on a rogue contractor. You'd survive this." He turned to her, the wind catching his hair. "Maybe I don't want to survive it." She hesitated. "You'll lose everything." He smiled faintly. "Then maybe I'll finally know what everything actually is." When she left, he looked out at the horizon again. The last rays of sunset burned against the skyline. He pulled out his phone and recorded a short message for the board, his voice steady and stripped of pretense. "I, Nicholas Rain, take full responsibility for the actions that led to the donor match used in Emily Murray's transplant. No money changed hands, but I pursued avenues that violated every ethical boundary I swore to uphold. I will resign as CEO of Rain Technologies effective immediately. I will cooperate with all investigations. This company was built to save lives. It should never cost them." He hit send. For the first time, the air around him felt lighter. Downstairs, Emily was sitting awake, a book open but unread in her lap. When Nicholas entered, she looked up with tired but knowing eyes. "You're leaving," she said. He nodded. "They'll need someone to blame. I'd rather it be me." "And what about Lily?" He smiled sadly. "I'll still be around. Just not as the man in the headlines." Emily studied him, her expression softening. "You've changed." "Lily did that," he admitted. "She reminded me what a heart is for." Emily's hand found his. "Then maybe she saved us both." They sat together in silence, the steady pulse of the heart monitor filling the space between them like a fragile symphony. Weeks passed. The scandal spread, then slowly began to fade, replaced by new headlines, new tragedies, new noise. Rain Technologies survived under new leadership. Nicholas withdrew from public life, selling his shares, donating most of his fortune to medical research. He moved into a modest house on the outskirts of the city, a place with creaking floors and too much sunlight. He spent his mornings tending a small garden, planting yellow daisies and wildflowers because Lily said butterflies liked them best. Sometimes Emily visited, walking slower now but alive, always alive. Lily raced through the yard chasing wind-blown petals, her laughter bright as bells. Once she asked, "Mr. Rain, why don't you have a job anymore?" He smiled. "Because I work too hard for the wrong things." She frowned, thinking, "But you work hard for us now." He looked at her, heart full. That's the only job I ever wanted. But peace, like any miracle, is never simple. One evening, months later, a letter arrived. Plain envelope. No return address. Inside was a single line typed on white paper. You were never supposed to get that, heart, no signature. No clue, just the faint scent of cigarette smoke. Nicholas stared at it, his pulse quickening. A chill swept through him. The past, it seemed, wasn't finished. He turned the paper over, nothing. But at the bottom corner, pressed faintly into the paper, was a watermark. A name, Harrow, the man in the charcoal suit. The ghost who'd offered him the unregistered miracle. Nicholas folded the letter slowly, mind racing. If his father's donation had been legitimate, then who was Harrow working for? And what had they tried to sell him before fate intervened? Outside, thunder rolled again, distant but growing. He went to the window, watching the sky darken over the garden where Lily's daisies swayed in the wind. Emily was inside reading to her, the sound of their voices faint and warm. Nicholas slipped the letter into a drawer. For now, he would keep the secret. There would be time to chase ghosts later. Right now, life was beating steadily again, fragile, imperfect, real. He turned away from the storm, toward the light spilling from the living room doorway. Lily looked up, smiling. Come on, Mr. Rain. It's story time. And as he stepped forward, closing the distance between who he had been and who he was still becoming, the rain began to fall again. Soft this time. Cleansing. Whispering against the windows like forgiveness.